What?
I said, I wonder if Pilot Pete and Kelly Flanagan are still together.
I think so. I thought I saw them like in the ocean kissing on one of their Instagrams.
They love kissing. I'm happy for them.
I guess. I mean, yeah, sure. Yeah. Why would I be a hater of that?
Why would you?
I don't know.
Are we rolling?
Oh, yeah. It's been recording.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
Do you want to give a little concert right now?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've given a concert because Corona season is out to ruin my life.
Isn't it weird? I don't know if we already talked about this, but like coronavirus was the only thing anyone was talking about, and then like something bigger than coronavirus happened.
Right?
That's crazy.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
How are you doing today? Tonight?
Oh, tonight. Honestly, you know what's funny? I've been looking forward to this because I feel like recording this podcast is like some of the few moments of the week that we get, like just you and I.
That's cute. It really is. It's like the only moment.
Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this.
We were in the car today with Winston, and I was reading an article about the CrossFit CEO that stepped down because he's a racist.
More like the board of directors is like, bro, if you don't leave, we're going bankrupt.
Yes, it's toodaloo. And Jay said, read the article out loud. And so as soon as I started reading the article out loud, Winston just blabbers nonsense over me. And that's why Jay and I don't talk to each other anymore. It's like impossible to talk to stuff.
That's what it's like.
Just
want you guys to know, you listeners at home or at work. Well, no one's at work, so you're at home.
They're working from home. It's all good. We're recording this a little later in the day, and I think that we're both just a little bit tired.
A little bit, but again, I have been looking forward to this, so I think that I've been reserving some energy in the tank for this.
How exciting. All right, well.
Yeah, we're back. Another week. Last week, we continued our conversation on race in America, and I spoke a little bit about, or I answered some questions that we've been getting throughout the last few weeks, and I mean that I've been getting for a good portion of my life. And this week, we thought it would be beneficial to kind of hear from the other side. So, as we talked about last week, Annie grew up in Utah and in an area that was predominantly white, upper middle class neighborhood, not really too much going on that like rocked the boat racially. So yeah, we thought it would be interesting to hear kind of her perspective, or the perspective of a white person who grew up around white people.
Yeah, and maybe interesting isn't really the word because it's like pretty boring.
Well, here's why I say interesting. Because for me, again, were I not married to you, I would think the things you're telling me are crazy. Like that makes no sense.
Oh, I see.
So for me, it's very interesting to hear your perspective and your experiences because they don't match mine at all.
So we could parallel that to like you looking at my upbringing and experiences and you saying that's crazy is the same as me hearing about your experiences as a black person in America for the first time and thinking that's crazy. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Well, I think a big part of the reason why I wanted to share my side of things is, I mean, I don't have our stats like right in front of us, but I know on Instagram at least our audiences are predominantly white. Would you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
I feel like most listeners are probably from or in Utah.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to, I've been very vocal on social media about race in the past 2 weeks, and I know that when people have never heard that before, or they've never heard that racism is still real, or stuff like that, they can become defensive. And I was like really fired up, so I felt like I was coming at people pretty hot anyway. But then I was thinking, like, maybe if I approached people more of like, I've been in your shoes and I didn't think it was real either.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not crazy for thinking that. As long as you're willing to learn, then people wouldn't be so defensive, Yeah. Just maybe offering that side of things, as far as like, we're in the same boat, but you don't have to be in that boat anymore,
Right. Like, you can see the horizon now.
Yeah.
Poke your head out from underneath the deck.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like we've already mentioned, raised in Sandy, Utah, which is, for those of you outside of Utah, like 15 minutes south of Salt Lake. So pretty central to the city. But again, our city isn't like a booming metropolis.
Yeah. I mean, it's growing, but it's not.
Yeah, especially when I was growing up. It's like, all right.
Although I do think that it's top 50 in the country.
Really?
Because I seem to remember seeing like a coronavirus map of some sort that was tracking like the top 50 cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that Salt Lake was on there.
What do you mean, like top? Is that most populated?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, we'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I grew up, I had one half black friend in high school that I was pretty close to. Well, I guess I should say two, because I had one family in my ward that I was close to. Mm-hmm. And then I had one male friend in my same grade that I had been in school with him for like 6 years. So he was the one that I feel like I had more interaction with regarding race, because we just saw each other more often. And I mean, with both the family that I still love to this day and him, I felt like I just loved them like anyone else. And I never demonstrated any sort of, discrimination based on their skin to what I thought. Now that I'm learning about microaggressions and kind of underlying tones of racism, I see that I have been guilty of certain phrases. Or I see that I have been guilty of the phrase like, you're an Oreo.
Yeah.
And it's important for me to say that, because I think that people are feeling guilty, and I just want people to know that, I was there at one point in my life because I wasn't educated.
Right.
And now that I have been educated, I would never use those phrases ever again. And I want to be clear to teach people why not to,
Yeah.
So I was thinking a lot about, upbringing in high school and kind of when you're starting to piece things together. And I was thinking about our history classes and our history books, and why it's so shocking for people in 2020 now who aren't in like the deep South to recognize that racism is still happening, white people. And I've seen a lot of like our history books, and our history of America has been whitewashed. Like, it's been written by old white people. And that's exactly the way that I learned it. Was we had the civil rights, we had Abraham Lincoln, and he abolished slavery. Then we had the civil rights movement, and that abolished racism. Like, that was what I thought happened.
That is nuts.
It's literally bananas. Like, there was never a conversation in my home about race.
Yeah.
Like, positive or negative. Just like it wasn't a topic.
Wasn't a topic, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it like a taboo, or just something that just didn't come up?
No. Not a taboo. It just didn't come up. It wasn't like there were no prejudiced feelings that were put into words.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. I think the culture, like white culture as a whole, has prejudicial feelings, but my mom didn't ever say like, white people are this, black people are this, Asian people are this, ever.
Yeah.
And neither in my extended family. So I think that just the way that everyone learns this, unless you're in like, again, the deep South or like maybe some areas of the East Coast, you're just not really seeing it very often.
So if I'm understanding correctly, based on like your public schooling education, your understanding was that after the Civil War, slavery was done, and after the Civil Rights Movement, racism was done.
Yeah. And after the movie Hairspray.
Yeah.
Welcome to the 60s.
Tracy Turnblad ended racism.
Tracy Turnblad was the end-all be-all for racism.
That, again, because we're married, and I believe everything that you say.
Well,
like,
you know I don't know how to tell a lie for the life of me.
That as well. But, like, that's nuts to me. Like, wow. Because, well, I'll let you keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it is nuts. I mean, it's just nuts that people can have such different experiences, like, in the same country. I mean, a country's really big, but it's like we all should be under the same laws and the same constitution. I know it's, like, not that way, but, you know, in an idealistic mind, and someone who's very, I don't know, like, I just didn't think twice about people being different. I liked that people were different. I thought that made them unique, you know?
Right. You just didn't necessarily realize that their lives were different than yours.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think anyone's lives, I mean, like, unless people were, like, you know, growing up in, like, really horrible homes, that sort of thing. But, like, my friends, like, in my circle of friends, and, like, specifically this family and my friend that was in the same grade as me, like, we were all in, like, the same socioeconomic class.
Yeah.
Is that the word?
Socioeconomic situation, or, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Classism is kind of touchy.
Oh, okay. Well, take that out. I don't want it to be touchy. I'm trying to be as correct as possible.
It's tough out here in 2020.
It really is, and you really have to think about what you're saying, and at 10:30 at night, it's, like, really hard to do that. but
yeah, so you guys were
best.
all in the same tax bracket, so to speak.
Yeah, and we grew up, I mean, I don't, you know, this is, again, my teenage brain. You know, we're all at the same religion. We're all doing the same hobbies. It seems like our parents must have the same amount of money because we're all doing the same things, have the same friend groups. Like, it didn't seem like their life
was that different.
Yeah, especially, like, the people in my ward, like, they lived right down the street from me. They had a beautiful home, like, beautiful, you know, it just seemed like parallel to what my life was. And they had wonderful parents. I don't know. I'm sure someone could, like, come at me for bringing all those things into consideration, but again, this is my teenage brain.
I don't think so. I mean, it's when you are in high school, I certainly didn't realize the nuance and the complexity of family matters. That, like, once you go into someone's house and close the door for the night, that, like, perhaps some people's lives are completely different than what their 9 to 5 looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
I only learned that after, like, moving out, and honestly, probably within the last 5 years. Like, that.
Well, yeah, it's like when you're raised a certain way, and you only see what's in the walls of your home, and if your parents aren't having, like, a ton of diverse conversations with you, either because they don't know either themselves or they don't want to have those conversations, it's like how you really don't have time to learn about someone else.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know how to walk in their shoes, for lack of a better word. phrase.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's kind of where I was at, and I carried that mentality through college. Again, went to college in Provo, which is 45 minutes away from where I grew up. Same dynamic, majority white people. We kind of talked about this last week. And I did not know anything about Black culture until I met you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I knew I knew about hip hop music, right? Yeah. But that's it. It was like, I still think I had these like microaggressions in my head of like, oh, how about the, well, you don't talk like a Black person, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. You're like the whitest Black guy I know.
Yes, 100%. So
I hate that.
I know. And I didn't realize how hurtful that was because, again, I was just completely aloof. Like, I will be the first to admit, like, I was aloof and I wasn't educated because I didn't know there's anything to be educated on, which I think is like what people are. They were in that boat before this week. And once the Black people and the white people who know are saying like, no, you need to educate yourselves, then they're taking a step back and realizing like, wait, I didn't even realize there was anything to educate myself on. I thought I knew the history. I went to history class.
Right.
That's, I think, where people are getting confused and defensive.
That is wild.
Right?
That is wild.
So you started explaining to me, that you still feel some racism in your life. And I do not remember, I don't think we had one big conversation. I think we had multiple conversations that was just continuation through dating, through engagement, through our marriage. Do you remember anything specifically sitting down?
The only one that I remember specifically was there was one time when I was living at the Capitol and we were in my car in the parking lot talking about having kids that would be Black. And I don't remember what we talked about, but for whatever reason, I have this vivid memory of us sitting in my car talking about our future kids.
Yeah.
But I don't quite remember the context other than it had to do with race.
Yeah. Well, and I think we had one other one that's probably in my head when your mom came to town. And we were all out at dinner and she was like, so what does your family think about you dating a Black guy? Just flat out, which honestly, I respect it. When you are in an interracial relationship, I think it is important to acknowledge it, whether you yourself think it's a big deal or not.
Mm-hmm.
So from those conversations, I started piecing together everything that you had been telling me, from the music to the clothing to the interests to the hobbies, that everything that kind of
culture. Yeah,
everything that makes up Black culture, and also how you had to learn it yourself as a West Indian person, because your parents are from the Caribbean and they themselves didn't grow up in America with the direct American Black culture.
Yeah, no, growing up, I didn't know about rap or hip hop until 6th grade. Before that, honestly, I only knew there were 2 American artists. I knew Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston. And besides that, it was just calypso, reggae, soca, dancehall, that's really all it was. And then in middle school, I was my friend Danny Cintron introduced me to Biggie Smalls.
Wow.
And I was like,
shout out Danny.
Wow. Him and Ja Rule were the first people I was introduced to. Where's Ja? Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, I did have to learn that as well.
You learned it. I mean, you still had your parents talking to you about the police from the get-go.
Right. See, yeah. So I didn't necessarily know about rap and sneaker culture and Black comedy and whatnot. But I mean, my parents were no dummies, so I definitely knew that yes, because of the color of your skin, you should be skeptical of police. And I mean,
And how were you dressed in elementary school?
Literally where I was going with that. So I wasn't allowed to wear sneakers to school. I think the first time I wore sneakers to school was in 8th grade.
Oh my gosh.
And they were Adidas shell toes. Yeah.
The most proper sneakers of all.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm pretty sure that was the first time that I was allowed to wear sneakers. That might have been 7th grade. But anyway, but it was definitely later in life. I wore sweater vests almost every day of elementary school.
So
and
cute.
On like the first day of school, I always had to have on a collared shirt. My parents were very particular about making sure that I didn't look average, so that I wouldn't be perceived as below average.
Right.
Yeah, it was very much so like, look, you're going to dress the part so that you are seen as the part or as equal. Yeah.
Yeah, which is very interesting. No white person thinks that their children need to be having these conversations, or like, I have to put them in these clothes so they're not perceived a certain way. I mean, to a degree, but not like...
Yeah, like no one sends their kid to school dirty on purpose, but like...
Yeah.
It was very much like a conscious thing.
Yeah, and a consistently conscious thing, like for a long time. So I thought that was very interesting, and just kind of taking into consideration all of the conversations that you would have with your mom and with your sister and with your family about that I would witness. And I don't think I ever once thought to myself, like, that's not real. Like, that's the part that's a little bit baffling to me in the past 2 weeks, of people being like, that's not real. To me, telling someone like how their life was, like their life experiences, isn't real is the same thing as someone like me having a conversation with someone who hasn't had a baby and me saying contractions are really painful.
Right.
They really hurt. Giving birth is painful. And them saying, no, it's not. It's like, how would you...
Like what? What are you saying?
Alarming that you're even going to try and argue with me on that. You haven't lived through it.
Right.
It's just so invalidating, and like, who does that? I don't... Anyway. So that was my introduction to Black culture, was you explaining it to me and then me listening and taking a step back and realizing, the things that I had done and my contribution to what is racism and prejudices. And, when people are like, don't touch my hair. Like, I had been the person that touched a Black person's hair, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And
you know what I started doing?
What? Touching people's hair back?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So like when they ask like, can I touch your hair? I'd be like, yeah, can I touch yours? And then they always are like, wow, it's so like curly, or it's so this or that. And I just feel like, yeah, yours is so just straight. Like, it's just on your head. Wow. Doesn't really move or do anything.
Doesn't really, yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, white people's hair moves.
I don't think it does. It just is there.
Okay.
I'm kidding. My point is that, like, I just react the same way that they do. And then they're, most of the time, are like, oh, maybe that was, like, a pointless...
gesture.
Weird, conversation to have.
I mean, from back before I knew it was like a thing, like a no-no, I felt like I was doing it more out of, I thought it was so cool and beautiful, and I liked it. It was more of like I like this, and I have never seen anything like it. I think it's pretty neat, Yeah. And then once people explain to me, like, I kind of feel like I'm an animal in a zoo when people like stare at my hair and pick me out and pick out all my differences.
Yeah.
It made so much more sense. Like, I would never want to make anyone feel that way. Like, I'm a spectator and they are there for my entertainment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was something that I learned about. And you had taught me all about certain phrases. You had told me about Black Lives Matter. You had been the one to teach me all these things. And I truly feel very lucky that I had my in-house expert who was able to teach me all these things, and I've been able to learn them the last 6 years, as opposed to these people who are kind of getting this shocking experience right now.
And they're getting it from the internet.
And they're getting it from very angry people. You have never been angry with me. I mean, I don't fault people for being angry, but it's hard to receive something knowing that you've done something wrong with that person giving it to you with an angry tone.
Right. Or just over the internet. Like, it's just...
Yes, 100%. I'm way more defensive when someone's like telling me something online than if they were telling me something in person.
That being said, I don't want it to sound like we're saying Black people shouldn't be angry. And that's
not what I'm saying either.
No, yeah, it isn't. And I just want to be like very clear that, I mean, we are where we are because I know as a Black person, it feels like we've been like having these conversations or like trying to get these points across, but like no one's been listening. So like now that it's kind of boiled over, then it's like, all right, here you go.
Yeah, I agree because I was trying to find the picture today in my feed, and the caption was that people don't understand the fear of their loved one being out driving and maybe getting pulled over by the police. And I remember posting that years ago. We were married. It was about you. I don't know what had been going, if it was a current event or if I was just having an anxiety attack that day. And no one really responded to it like maybe your mom did.
Yeah, she definitely would have.
Yeah. And thinking back to that experience and then now, it's just shocking to see the reaction, especially from my white friends and my white followers. It's like, I'm very grateful that people are waking up, but it's like I mentioned this a little while back, and
right.
I can only imagine the frustration that Black people feel when they've been mentioning it their whole lives, you know?
The part that is like, it's kind of wild to me is like, so Black people and white people like love Dave Chappelle. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves Dave Chappelle. He's the GOAT, right?
I don't know. I hadn't really heard about Dave Chappelle until I dated you.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't have cable growing up, so you wouldn't have watched Comedy Central and had the Chappelle show.
Very true. And even if I did, I'm sure I wouldn't have been allowed to watch anything on Comedy Central.
Yeah, good point. But yeah, I mean, white people love Dave Chappelle. Mm-hmm. And what is like wild to me is that Dave Chappelle has all of these bits, like especially in his early stand-up of like driving with his white friend. And like his white friend being like, "Oh, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know I couldn't do that." And then he makes the point of like, and that's the end of the story. Yeah. And everyone like dies laughing. And then the punchline, it's like, yeah, Black people, that's a crazy story. Like, you mean you just walked up to a police officer high and nothing happened to you?
Yeah.
And so what's kind of like weird for me and where I feel like this disconnect is like, so did you guys not get that joke? Or like not understand the context of that joke?
Yeah.
Because I feel like in order to think the joke was funny, you would have had to recognize the irony of, yes, Black people and police don't get along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so like, I'm still like trying to believe.
Give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, give people the benefit of the doubt that like they just didn't know these things, but it's like, so then how were y'all laughing with us in, I don't even know what year that would have been, like early 2000s when Dave Chappelle's cracking all these jokes and like y'all are eating it up. I don't know.
Good. I mean, I think that's an excellent question. I think where I can only speak for myself, right? Or like my family experiences and not knowing who Dave Chappelle was and not hearing anyone in my immediate or extended family talk about Dave Chappelle. I don't know how exposed they were to those jokes or to that commentary. So I know what you're talking about. I just don't know where that demographic of white people is, or how old they are. I don't know who that.
Well, I mean, I feel like they're our age. Like, yeah.
I guess if they were our age, no, I'm not even going to try and speak for anyone else. I truly don't know. You bring up an excellent point, and I don't know. Because, again, to me, once you started explaining it to me, it was like, oh, a light bulb went on.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never had exposure to it before then.
Makes sense.
One thing I want to ask you while we're recording is a little bit more about microaggressions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people have seen these pop up on social media lately. They are the phrases that a lot of white people have said to black people. They don't necessarily mean it in a bad place or in a bad way, but it's just not tactful, and it ends up being more demeaning than helpful. 2 that we brought up are, you're an Oreo,
mm-hmm.
you're black on the outside and white on the inside, and then you're the whitest black guy I know. So explain why those are hurtful phrases.
Yeah. So, I mean, typically, if any of you listening have said these things, you've probably said it to a black person that you knew that either didn't dress like what you thought they would dress like as a black person, or they didn't speak
mm-hmm.
like what you thought they would speak like
mm-hmm.
as a black person. And what's insulting about that is that if I speak well, or if I speak eloquently, if I
mm-hmm.
Can communicate very effectively, and your response to that is, wow, like, you don't talk black. What I'm understanding is to speak well is to speak white, and to not speak well is to be black.
Mm-hmm.
And to dress this way, or I mean, honestly, people would tell me that, I'm like, I'm literally just wearing jeans. Like, like these are like normal jeans.
Didn't know they were trademarked by white people.
Yeah, like I didn't know these were white jeans, but like,
they're just pants.
I don't know, they're just jeans. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, but you don't dress like you're black. And I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, so are only white people allowed to wear like these Old Navy jeans? Like, is that what that means? Or like,
yeah,
like, do I have to dress a certain way in order for your stereotypes to make sense in your brain? And
in order to appease you.
Yeah.
And your stereotypes.
I mean, the one that has like always killed me and like is the one that I got the most often was because of the way that I speak. Mm-hmm. That people are like, yeah, wow, you speak so eloquently.
You speak so well.
Yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, I grew up in America and went to public school and got A's in English just like you.
Yeah.
Like, I speak just like you. I don't speak so well. It's like, it's like there's this undertone of like, wow, you speak so well for a black person. Like, what?
Exactly. It's like, finish the phrase. Finish what you meant.
Yeah.
Say it with your chest.
Say it with your chest. Yeah. So, I mean, Brie Ray gave an amazing speech at that rally we were at last Thursday.
Yes.
And like all of the different things that like she's heard growing up in Utah, or like you're pretty
for a black girl.
Like,
never seen a pretty black girl before.
Yeah, or like you're so unathletic for a black girl, or you're whatever for a black girl.
Yep.
And it's those types of things that are like, what do you see black people as? Like, when you say that, you're communicating to me that you see black people as less than. And because I'm performing at your level, you see me as not black.
Exactly. And I think it just, while so many of the phrases, I mean, okay, again, I shouldn't speak for other people, when I used any of these phrases, like recognizing in my past, I have used some of these phrases. For me, they weren't coming out of a negative place. I didn't think I was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is I was doing that. I don't have hate in my heart, but it was a pre-existing prejudice, I guess.
Well, I mean, from my observation, white people in the suburbs, they know black people from what they see on TV or what they see in movies.
Yeah, that must have been it because, like I said, like we didn't have conversations in the house.
So if you've grown up in suburbs, USA,
yeah,
and all you know of black people is that you've seen rap music videos, and I mean,
that was really the extent of it.
Yeah,
that
perhaps
really
that's all you've
was.
seen.
Yeah.
And so in your mind,
I don't know if you've seen Step Up.
Yeah,
the two main dancers aren't even black.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yo, is that problematic now? Anyway.
Channing Tatum is incredible no matter what.
That's a good point. Yo, Honey Daniels. Shout out Honey Daniels.
Shout out.
Yeah. Just got one. Anyway, the point is that, I mean, yeah, I think white kids in the suburbs just have a very skewed reality of what it means to be black. And that can be frustrating.
Yeah, and I think it's our job as white people from the suburbs to recognize that even if, our hearts aren't filled with hate like a burning racist from the South, it's still hurtful, and we need to take ownership of what we've said and apologize for it and stop using those phrases. Leave them out of our vocabulary because we are putting people in a box. We're putting people in a box where they cannot grow, they cannot thrive, they then internalize themselves a certain way, or we continue internalizing them a certain way, and it's not helpful for anyone, and it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to list off some other microaggressions. We don't have to dive into these, but you aren't really black. You are so exotic. You are pretty for a black girl. I love biracial babies. Can I touch your hair? Where are you from? No, where are you really from? And then
I love asking white people that question, actually. You may have heard me ask people this before.
Yeah.
I love asking, so, like, where are you from? And they'll be like, oh, like, my dad's from Indiana. I'll be like, no. But, like, where are you from, though? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you're just turning this back on white people, like, everything they do to you. You're like, see how you like it.
Yeah, I just give it back, and then they kind of realize, like, oh, maybe that's a dumb question.
Well, I have a question on that line, in that vein.
But I'm never mean.
No, you are a nice person, but
Extremely sarcastic.
yes. If someone has an accent, is it rude to ask, like, where are you from?
If someone has an accent, no. Because, I mean, then there's something clearly different about you. Like,
okay,
you do not sound like you're from here. So, like,
yeah, I want to be sensitive.
I mean, every Australian person that I meet, I already know they're from Australia, but I still ask, like, wow, so where are you from?
Yeah.
And they're like, Australia. I'm like, wow, crikey, mate. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah. So, no, I mean, like, yeah, if someone has an accent, I think that's a very justifiable question to be like, where are you from?
What do you think about people asking and, like, they genuinely want to know where your heritage is from?
Ask that.
Where's your heritage from?
Yeah. Like, what is your ethnicity? Where are your ancestors from? What's your ethnic background?
Yeah.
And then offer yours. And it baffles me that, like, some white people just think that, like, oh no, my family's just from here. It's like, unless you're Native American, no, they're not. So, and you don't look it. So where are they from?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going to ask somebody where they're from, offer where you're from as well.
Okay. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. All right. Well, I wanted to wrap up with just some words of advice for people who are learning that it's not going to be overnight that you are able to change the dialogue in your head.
Yeah.
And I think still to this day, this is something I work on because it's when we got married, that's like 21 years of learning things a certain way or having just a certain assumptions.
Yeah.
And now I have to spend the next 21 years unlearning them and practicing what I preach and learning how to better communicate with people, period. Like people of color, but also, microaggressions can translate in a lot of ways. And for gaslighting.
Me, I've caught myself, especially like with the LGBT community, like in understanding that sometimes the things that I think are not the case. And because we grew up in the time that we grew up in, it's like, bro, you got to fix that. Like you can't say certain things or like think certain things like that. And, anyway, I mean, I just to your point that we all have to unlearn some of the things that we were taught.
Yeah. And translating that to, people, anyone who is different than us, that maybe we're not treating them as equal. Maybe we're not seeing them just as our friend, Gaslighting is another one that I wanted to touch on because there's been a lot of gaslighting, a lot of you're making this up, this isn't real. And people experience gaslighting all the time. I know I experienced it in a really unhealthy relationship. It was very emotionally abusive, and I thought I was crazy for like a full year, and it really did a number on me. So where are we gaslighting people? Like, let's learn to stop doing that. And just, I think if we can take a minute and truly listen, lead with empathy, and have humility for acknowledging, like, you know what? I haven't done things great in the past, and I'm going to do better. And
right.
I didn't watch this fully, so I apologize, like, if I'm making a poor reference, but Hannah Brown recently said the N-word, and she said it on an Instagram Live, and she was intoxicated. She kind of slurred over it, and then people were like, you just said the N-word, and she was like, I would never do that, blah, blah, blah. She apologized shortly after, and
we got you on video.
Yeah.
Your own video.
You're on video. She apologized afterward, and I know that Rachel, Lindsay, and I'm sure a lot of other people were upset with her apology. Like, it was just kind of this, I don't know, didn't really feel like she felt the emotion of it or understood the severity of it.
That's the thing. I like, again, from what I'm understanding more recently about white people is that, like, I don't think they get it.
They don't get it. That's why I'm trying to do this podcast to be like, you guys don't get it, and it's okay. Just learn to listen so we do get it.
Right.
Just how you're saying you don't get my life, but you've listened and you understand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like, it is genuinely hard for me to even, like, believe that, like, wow, that was really your experience.
Yes. So I think that we can all have empathy for the other side.
Right.
Because now we're basically holding mirrors up in different ways of like, It is hard for me to believe that. Anyway, going back to Hannah Brown, she released a second apology, which I thought was more on the nose of what she should have done. And
the first time around,
understanding the severity. And she said, like, do not defend me. I need to be held accountable, and thank you for holding me accountable. And I just think that's more of the level we need to be on. Like, hold ourselves accountable, apologize. If you know that you've hurt or said things to people in the past, your friends of color, apologize. Like, make sure that they know that you support them now and that you're going to try and do better and that, they're loved. I have really appreciated everyone who's reached out to us in the last couple weeks. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of friends reach out not knowing that this is what it was like. And I'm just grateful that they have been listening, you know, because where I stand is like, I see so much hate on the internet, but I genuinely feel like if any of our friends came over, or even any of our, like, why do I want to say associates?
Acquaintances?
Yes. If any of our associates if any of our acquaintances came over and they had a genuine conversation with you about your experiences, I don't think they'd leave being like, Jay's a liar. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to say that to someone's face. So why are you saying it on the internet? Like, why are you so quick to jump to this conclusion? Why don't we just listen and try to understand each other better? So just so everyone, I mean, not that anyone probably listening is questioning at this point, but like, since being married to Jay, I've watched him get racially profiled in stores, get followed, get watched to see if he's going to steal something. I have been with him when we went to a restaurant and we had to leave because we were so uncomfortable. He has gotten off the elevator for people just to make them more comfortable. He has crossed the road to make people more comfortable that are walking towards him. He was called the N-word out of a moving vehicle into his vehicle in Holiday, Utah, literally last year. And again, this was probably 2 years ago. I put this on my Instagram story. No one reacted. Not a thing. It was crickets. So it's like, okay, I'm glad that people are listening now. I'll say that. But just know, like, these things didn't just happen in last week. Jay didn't just make them up. These are things I have witnessed since being married to Jay. I'm not saying like he didn't have any valid experiences before then, but I'm just adding to his testimonials. Yeah. Like, this is real. We need to be understanding of one another. We need to make a change. And I truly believe, like, I have so much more hope than I ever have that the people are waking up.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think I released an episode, or the first episode of my new series called Questions.
Mm-hmm. It was so awesome, by the way.
Thanks. And so I had like Bree Ray and James Curran on there, and one of the things James was saying was that I feel like, or he feels like for the first time that like white people are kind of waking up to what the country has been like and what the Black experience is like in America. And it's the first time he's ever witnessed, and I've ever witnessed, like white people caring about Black issues.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily ever thought that would happen.
Yeah.
But here we are, which is a great thing.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast today, Comments by Celebs, and they had Justin Sylvester on there interviewing him from afar. I mean, everyone's zooming in.
I was about to say Justin Sylvester Stallone, but that's not correct.
I think his name's Justin Sylvester. He works at E! News, and he's also African American and member of the LGBT community. And he had been to some rallies this weekend, and he was saying, again, this is his experience in LA. He was like 60% of the people out there were white. Like, this is the first time that like white people have been so worked up about it. And then the girls who are interviewing him are in New York, and they were saying that they had seen a photo of a sign that said, "This is the last generation you're gonna F with," or something like that. Like, truly, it's like the young people are really waking up and pushing this movement more than ever. Not to say like older generations weren't trying, but it's like these young people are finally, they're fired up.
Yeah.
They're fired up, and I'm so proud of everyone who's like really stepping up to the plate, who's doing their part, who's really trying to learn. Like, it's been awesome.
Last civil rights movement, it was Bernie Sanders alone.
It was Tracy Turnblad.
Yeah, it was Tracy Turnblad and Bernie Sanders
on her back
out here getting arrested.
I don't want anyone to think that I think that Tracy Turnblad like
is a real person.
I know.
Also apparently Mitt Romney's dad was out here marching in the civil rights movement. Did you see that picture of Mitt Romney marching?
No, but did you see the tweet that was like, Every couple years, Mitt Romney just resurfaces to show that he's doing more for the Republican Party by doing the absolute least or something like that, like doing the least amount of work and still being the shining star of the Republican Party.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Yo, I bet Republicans are like, yo, where is Mitt Romney at a time like this?
I'm saying that, like, honestly, could you imagine? Never mind. We won't get into politics. It's just...
I know. But, I mean, the point I was making was he posted this picture of him and his wife, Anne, marching in a Black Lives Matter protest. And
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah,
I'm going to look it up right now.
And then he also posted a picture of his dad, a black and white picture, like, marching in a civil rights protest. And all the, like, quote retweets.
Gosh.
Right? Yeah, all the quote retweets were like, yo, we disagree on pretty much everything politically, but thank you for restoring hope to Republicans. I was like, dang, bro,
could you imagine rolling up to the rally and, like, seeing behind the mask, like, Mitt Romney?
That's funny. It's just, like, not the dude I would expect to be there, but there he is.
You know what? Putting the whole Republican Party on his back.
On his back. Yeah.
Just some back-breaking work right now.
Dang, bro.
What's it like being the only one? Just kidding. I won't say that.
I mean, again, this is not a political podcast, but I mean, the undertones of Republicans not caring about black issues is a thing for black people. Like, typically Republican voters don't make black issues high priority when it comes to their stances on things. Like, it's just, you don't see black issues on any Republican platforms. So that's why it's strange, or, like, I don't know, kind of odd to see, like, a Republican senator at a Black Lives Matter rally.
Yeah, just a little odd, but the point being right here, like, Black Lives Matter is not a political issue. It's a human rights issue. We're not trying to, like, pin it on the Dems or the Republicans to, like, fix it. It's just everyone should be concerned about it. And it's human rights, you know?
Bet.
Oh, my gosh. I could talk about this for days. I bet you could, too. I mean, you already have talked about it for days.
It has been weeks and weeks and weeks of DMs and iMessages. Essay. I was telling Haley, my manager, that I think I've written more essays in the last 2 weeks than I did my entire college career.
Yeah, that carpal tunnel is real.
My thumbs have been moving.
Thumbs are burning calories faster than anything else.
For real.
Well, I just want to wrap up by saying thank you guys for listening. We have doubled our Instagram following on the Internet's Mom and Dad since the conversations around race started surfacing, and that just shows me a lot about you guys. It shows me that people want to change and grow and learn more, and I think that's awesome. I want to open up our DMs and emails to, like, any questions that you have. I know personally growing up, I was so afraid to ask any questions to any of my black friends. I didn't want to offend anyone, and so I never did, but Jay is so even keel, and he won't get mad. I should let you talk.
Oh.
Is it all right if people ask you any questions they have?
Yeah. I mean,
you already said that kind of last week, but...
Yeah, I mean, the DMs are open, so ask away.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that there's, like, an astonishing amount of questions on, like, we will address. Like, we want to continue this conversation. This is not a trend. It's more than a hashtag. Like, this is a movement that's going to change the course of history, and we're just happy to be on the right side of it.
Oh, Barack Obama.
I love him.
All right. Well, I'm Jay.
I'm Annie.
We are the Internet's Mom and Dad. And
we love you.
I love you. We're proud of you. You're doing great.
You're doing great.